Okay, we're ready to start back in with our mold and moisture concerns during real estate transactions discussion today. Part two of our 2CE time together. Mold and moisture is a common issue, and it is many times identified during home inspections. And it will take the form of maybe water damage, or a home inspector may question, some suspect contamination or staining or material that seems to be present on certain wood structures, or in a basement, or in an attic, or maybe a roof leak, some evidence of past leaks, plumbing problems, again, plumbing leaks. There could be all kinds of situations. Leaks around windows, cracks in foundations that show signs of water intrusion, sump pump systems or lack thereof. And so we address a lot of these types of concerns during the transaction process. And so this segment, addressing mold and moisture concerns in real estate. Well, why do we do that as an indoor air quality specialist? We do it because we know that mold causes certain health-related symptoms and has certain negative health-related effects. And so one of those things is what they call systemic infection. It's caused by the inhalation or inhaling mold in the air, which is very common for people to be exposed to, both indoors and outside. The problem is that some people have severe sensitivities to mold, where others may just have a very mild reaction, whether it be physical or allergy symptoms. Most people who have exposures that are elevated to mold cause limited to no symptoms, or if they have a problem that develops indoors and they have an extreme concentration of mold that they are being exposed to continuously indoors, then it would typically cause allergy type symptoms, stuffiness, sinus issues, maybe some skin problems like itchy skin and that kind of stuff. So in the extreme condition, mold, because some types that are common types as well that we see in our work on a daily, weekly basis, some types release mycotoxins, and they are called toxic molds, and they have these mycotoxins that are present in the spores. These may be carcinogenic or cancer causing. There has been some research, and some of the medical community has suggested that there may be links between mold and cancer. This can also cause exposure to these toxins that some types of mold release, may cause cold and flu-like symptoms, which would be a little more extreme. Symptoms going to make you feel bad, headache, nosebleeds, dermatitis, and immune suppression. So if you are being weakened by your mold exposure indoors, then that can make your immune system more susceptible to being attacked by other problems or other issues such as viruses, or whatever the case may be. So this is why we deal with mold, because as a company, Environmental Doctor is an environmental health specialist, more so than say a contractor who says they do mold or something like that. So our mission is to protect people indoors and to at least help to make our communities safer and healthier by the work that we do on a daily basis. So we want to do it well, and we want to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So that's why we do mold and the related problems that it causes, to try to help people to avoid those. allergy symptoms are the most common reaction to mold. Excuse me, hit the wrong button. And then also rhinitis, bronchitis, and asthma, which typically is going to cause uncomfortable shortness of breath and even more extreme breathing problems for sensitive individuals with that condition. So it's even more dangerous for people who have asthma and other lung-related problems such as COPD, any other lung disease, you know, mesothelioma, all these other things that we hear about from the attorneys on TV. Anyway, the basic history of the mold remediation industry, or the mold development of mold problems indoors, or abnormal indoor ecologies related to mold, goes back to, it's all construction related. It goes back to the improvements, quote unquote, that we have made in our construction techniques over time. 1920s, we started to build and install indoor plumbing. Before that, we did not have indoor plumbing. When we started to do indoor plumbing, then we started to have water leaks indoors. And water leaks indoors, especially when they go undetected for periods of time in wall cavities and behind fixtures, cause mold problems to develop and other structural or materials damage, to building materials damage. In the 50s, we decided we were hot all the time and fans weren't working that well anymore, so we invented air conditioning or cooling systems, central cooling systems, window units, and all these other types of things. Well, when we did that, we said, well, we don't want the windows open anymore because we're using this, that just lets all the cooling, the cool air or air conditioning out. And to this day, people probably complain to each other when the kids leave the door open and the air conditioning's on. At least I've heard that happen during parties and so forth, where it can't keep up because so many people are coming in and out. So we close the windows, we keep the doors shut, we built tighter homes, and that created more of a bottling of moisture effect, I would say probably is the biggest thing, is the tighter homes. They don't breathe as well, and we've continued on that path to the point where now, 70s energy crisis, we know that, you know, then we were really getting serious about saving energy, so we made it even more serious with insulation values, tighter insulation, looking at all kinds of things like how we install windows, making more efficient windows, and again, tighter homes. And so all that bottles things indoors, whether it be allergens, dust, you know, things that building materials emit, chemicals, volatile organic compounds that off-gas from new materials in construction, adhesives, caulks, can even be carpeting, you know, all kinds of sources indoors that create indoor air quality issues, including mold, which is generally going to be caused by some source of moisture indoors that's abnormal, that allows mold to amplify and grow indoors because that's abnormal. So it would be high humidity, again, indoor leaks, roof leaks. A lot of times it's lack of air circulation, which a lot of people don't realize. You know, you don't want to close air conditioning or heating vents all the way. Even if you don't use the basement very often, you still should keep those vents about 20–25% open and let that air circulate. I'm a big proponent of continuous air circulation. The modern heating and air conditioning systems have electronically commutated motors in them. They cost about $4 a month to run 24/7, and those blowers will last for a long time. So there's really, most people are worried, oh, it's going to cost me a lot of money to keep the blower running at the thermostat thermostat that where you can turn the fan on. I run mine continuously. I do have a type that'll let me I can set that to a low, medium, or high speed electronically, or I can go to the thermostat and do it. I can do it on my phone. I mean, it's so cool now. You can, and it's not even anything that's super high end. It's just that's where the industry is. So these motors, the newer motors, been putting them in these furnaces for 20 years, but most of the new ones are electronic and they don't cost much to run. And you can generally set the continuous airspeed for low, so it's not like the thing's always running at high speed, which will irritate people. I just keep it low. You don't even know, you can't even hear it. I mean, you can barely feel it at a singular vent in the house, but it runs all the time. And if you think about it, you're not filtering air through the furnace filter that you're using, so people will go buy a better furnace filter or whatever. That's not filtering if that air's not moving through it. So you're only filtering and improving air quality with your heating and cooling system if you have air circulation present. Side note. Okay, identifying mold and moisture concerns. Generally, we advise people to look for signs of past moisture or damage. This can even be seen in a slab home. If you see condensation on the inside of windows, this is something a lot of people don't realize. On the inside of the windows, a lot of times they'll be getting water in the ductwork, but this would only be slabs where the ductwork is underneath the floor. You can take a vent cover off. If those are installed properly, they are sloping to the vent from the furnace area to the vent location. So you can see water lines in them. And if it's a slab home and you're having some kind of humidity issue and you really don't know why, sometimes it's caused by lack of insulation, which will be on the next slide. But look for visible contamination. If you can see what you think is mold on structures, wood, unfinished areas, wood joists and basements, obviously drywall, behind baseboards, areas with poor circulation, closets and stuff like that sometimes with no vent inside. Look for that type of stuff. But if you can see that, that's millions of spores. A low concentration is normal. You can't see it growing or amplifying on surfaces. That's if you see it, it's millions of them. It's not normal for mold to grow indoors. There's sores. Hopefully it's something minor, if it's just like, in a little area or something, but if it's in a widespread area, then there's something going on that needs to be addressed. A lot of times it's high humidity, and that sometimes isn't obvious to people, because like I said, maybe you need a dehumidifier, maybe it's a wet basement, maybe you have drainage issues outside. It could be lots of different things, and so a lot of times, our first rule is to identify the cause of it. So if you call us, what we do is our number one rule, top of the list, first thing we're doing is trying to figure out why it's there. What caused this? Now, we may not be perfect, but we're trained and we have certifications, and we have these board certifications that are nationally recognized, that we put our people through these things, and then all the reps for looking at thousands of jobs, we're better at it than probably most people. But the first thing is you've got to figure out what's causing this, and then you have to address it. It doesn't mean we won't necessarily do that work, but we're at least looking at it and going, okay, these downspouts are dumping right at the corner of the house. It's very obvious to us, but they might have been doing that for the last 20 years. The elbow came off, or somebody hit it with the lawnmower and just never fixed it, and it's just dumping right there. And the next thing you know, you've got it, it's keeping that foundation wall wet, especially the block, which is porous foundation. Block foundations are the worst for residential for this problem if they're a basement. I mean, because you got a 8 foot below grade, 6-7 feet below grade block, any water source that's pooling along that wall, it'll come through. And it might not come in the form of standing water. It's just keeping that inside that block full of water all the time, and it affects the indoor environment. So stuff like that. Unusual musty odors. You know, that's always kind of a red flag, but in real estate, we all know that with, you know, vacants and houses are closed for weeks and months at a time, you know, people aren't coming in and out. That does keep the must down. So, you know, we just want to be cognizant of it. It doesn't mean you have a problem. Just because it's a little musty in a house, anybody goes to the lake, you walk in the lake house, you use the Airbnb or whatever. I mean, generally you're going to smell a little musty, you know, open it up, and an hour or so, it's fine. Probably not even an issue. So, not necessarily, but this is something that, in combination with other things, might be an indication there could be reason to have maybe a little bit further attention here, a little further inspection by someone who with a trained eye. Pay attention to symptoms. I mean, if you go in and you know, you get all stuffy in there, and you're only in there for 15, 30 minutes, and your stuff, you know, your nose is all stuffy. You maybe even have a little bit of itchy, you know, itchy skin, your arms, your face, eye, nose, throat irritation, headache, stuffy nose, skin irritation. These things are indications, you know, in combination with maybe some of these other things. And then generally that stuff will resolve when you leave. Within an hour or two at the very most, I mean, it's probably less than an hour. You leave that property and you're kind of not stuffy anymore, and you know, nothing's bothering you. I mean, that's probably an indication that there's some elevated mold concentrations in that space. Root cause identification, it warrants a little more focus. The causes are not always obvious. That's where we try to help people and support people. Drainage problems, high humidity, HVAC issues, insulation deficiencies, water intrusion with an extra T, it's misspelled. It's not water intrusion. Water intrusion, construction defects. So construction defects can be the hardest to diagnose. We've seen a couple where they didn't put the wrap on them. That's a big problem. Like maybe just on one wall or something, they didn't put the Tyvek on them. This is modern construction. Didn't put the Tyvek wrap outside the OSB or the exterior sheathing. Generally OSB, which is, mold just loves that stuff. It's not as good as plywood. It's, you know, it's just not. And, you know, that'll cause all kinds of problems, because generally you're going to have water behind there. I mean, if it's brick, that's why they have weep holes. I mean, they put the brick in right against that wrap. It's on the ledge, and anyway, siding the same way. You get some moisture back there, so it could be a construction defect of some sort. It could be window installation, faulty window installation, wasn't sealed or foamed in properly, and we see it all. Foundation cracks are common. Foundation cracks where it's finished, and usually it'll be it won't usually flood the basement. Usually it's going to be a little half moon under the window, and it's drywall, and uses the carpet or flooring, and get messed up right there, a little half circle or something. Sometimes you'll be able to see a crack, but not usually if it's finished. You might see it in the drywall, some kind of imperfection, at the corner. So there's just a million different things. So we try to do that, but that's the biggest thing, is to try your best to, okay, what caused this? Address that, no matter who that's going to be. Window specialist, roofer, could be anybody, could be us, depending. What to do when you see concerns: use a professional with certifications. This is not required in the mold industry in Ohio. There are regulated states. New York, a handful of states are regulated. Florida is very, very strict. Hard to get a license in Florida. Huge problem in the South. Mold is just, I mean, your air conditioner stops working for 2-3 days in Florida at the wrong time of the year, that whole house could be contaminated. I mean, it'll start growing. If it has the right conditions, they say 48 to 72 hours. So in the restoration trade, they say you need to dry this out within 48 to 72 hours. Like if your basement floods, that's another thing. If you run into you got a listing and you know, it's in contract, and the basement floods, and the people already moved to South Dakota to retire or something, that's when it happens. Terrible. But you just wanna try to get it dried out within, if you can get them dried out, I think they say 2 to 3 days is what they say. I think you probably, once you got it down in the process within a couple days, and then it takes you a few days or whatever, you can avoid having a big problem. Don't disturb visible contamination, especially if it's extensive. I mean, if you see, you know, drywall or something's got a bunch of what you think mold, don't mess with it. We really wouldn't recommend trying to clean it or anything. I mean, we could talk about it. If it's a square foot or less than 3 square feet, then, you know, the protocols allow for no containment, and we can suggest a little solution that can be used as long as we know what caused it. Sometimes it'd be behind something in the garage or something like that was there for 20 years, a refrigerator or something, but usually we just go do it for people. Note visible contamination when present, location, you know, how you would describe, maybe take a picture, send it to us, or whatever. Give it to the home inspector. Order professional testing to make a positive ID. This came up, Arthur, briefly, that professional testing is done on the site, but the samples have to be collected, and then they have to be FedEx. They have to be sent to an accredited microbiology lab. So we use express FedEx. We use FedEx overnight, priority. The lab has them the next morning. We get them out as late as 9 o'clock at night. Lab has them the next morning. They have a 2-day turnaround. You can pay them extra to get it the same day they receive the samples, but generally not that critical. If it is, we can do it as quick as the next day after we're there. We can get the result. Generally, it's gonna take 5 business days from the time we go to the property to the time we release our report. A lot of times what happens is the home inspectors will do a basic mold test, but they'll send the samples to the lab. The lab will send them an email report, an analytical, and they'll just forward it to the agent and say, here's your mold report. Well, the problem with that is it doesn't include any site observations. It doesn't, I mean, we're testing the moisture content of wood materials. We're looking at the root cause. We're trying to figure out what this is gonna take, why did this happen? And we're doing the samples all in our fee for the testing. That's all included. So we do environmental assessment, we're gonna check the humidity of the space, test the moisture content of the finishing materials, we're gonna look at everything, we're gonna do our best to determine root cause, and then that's all going to go into our report, which is on our letterhead, and it's a report here's the background, here's our discovery, here are the readings we took, here are the observations we made, here's what we're gonna recommend based on all these results, here's what the analytical data says from the lab. And that's what it takes to properly diagnose and make recommendations related to mold. And I'm not knocking a home inspector, I'm just saying, most of them, what they're doing as part of the home inspection, it's a screening tool. They're qualified to do it, but what they're doing is they're screening it, they're gonna test the air, and then they're just gonna forward you the results. And that lab report's gonna say, hey, this might be suspect, this is elevated or whatever it says, but there's not gonna be any, then you're still gonna wanna call a professional to come out and give you an estimate based on what you have. So it's gonna cost you some time and so forth during a transaction, if you will. So we'll have to go back, but we can use the report that they provide. And then we can we're still gonna have to go out and look at it. Okay, so let's keep moving. Correcting mold and other indoor air quality concerns. Call a specialist for support if there's any doubt. Develop a plan of action, which is generally a written scope of work. Diagnose the problem before taking remedial action. So we want to, again, determine the root cause, address the causes of the problem. Ideally before you take the action, it can be part of a plan, and then you can say, okay, well, we're going to do all this kind of in this order. That's fine, but you don't want to just skip right to trying to kind of clean it up and then just walk away, because it's just going to come back. You haven't addressed the root cause. work with experienced professionals. I mean, mold is no joke. Like I said, the problem is you're selling a house, you can have liability beyond the transaction if it's not handled properly. There's a lot of legal precedent in the area of mold. It is actually a very litigious industry because there aren't a lot of regulations, so you end up with the finger pointing. You know, we hired you because you were supposed to know, or no, you told us to use this whatever it is. I don't know what they, it's not common in terms of the number of issues, but, dealing with it properly and following the best industry standards, which are documented, and that's what we follow and how we get certified, and we promise to follow these things as part of that certification. At least we have a defensible position as long as we followed those procedures, and we had it, then it protects the agent as well. And then, of course, we carry all kinds of professional liability and contractors pollution coverage for both the advice that we give people for money, the testing that we do for fees, and the remediation work that we do. We protect ourselves and our clients at a very high level, and that's where, back to the commercial work, we're insured to do work at Wright-Patterson and all these places, these big multifamily properties. Well, we have to carry this real high level of insurance. Well, it covers everything we do, so it helps us residentially a lot to be our revenue and our work. So, credentials to speak, or to seek, experience in assessment, testing, and remediation, board certifications in structural mold, investigation, testing, and remediation, certification in HVAC systems cleaning. This is something we didn't talk about. When you have mold problems indoors, generally it has the potential, no matter what, but generally it's going to have some effect on the HVAC system. We generally are going to clean those systems after mold removal is done. It just depends on where the ductwork's located, where the contamination is. That's all going to be part of our recommendation. It's not every time, but what we do is we carry a national certification as an air system cleaning specialist. We have 3 or 4 of those on our full-time staff, and then we have a special second certification that's called Ventilation Systems Microbial Remediation, which is mold remediation inside air systems. And that is how to properly restore, air systems and their components like coils and dampers and all kinds of stuff that's inside, especially commercial systems. But residential is, it's just simpler the way it's designed and installed. It doesn't have all the controls that send air to different rooms and so forth, generally speaking. But that is something that we carry to be able to properly restore air systems as part of these remediation projects. Indoor environmental professionals, generally, instead of, I'm not a big advocate of using, construction type people to deal with mold problems. It's done some commercially, but residentially, I don't recommend it. Using, say, a handy person or handy, that type of a contractor who's, oh yeah, I can deal with that. Problem is that again, they might do a little cleanup, but they're probably not going to address the root cause and do some of the more detailed work that's going to ensure or help to ensure that you won't have some problem in the future from this experience once you get this thing taken care of. Avoid individuals or companies without IQ credentials. That's indoor air quality credentials. That could come in different forms, but generally it's going to be some kind of certifications. I just here include some pictures. This is a before picture of one. It had something to do with the plumbing and this whole area. The people went around. I think they were snowbirds, gone for months out of the year. They come home and this is what they find. And then it, when it's done, it looks like this if it's cleaned properly. Sometimes there's some residual staining that will encapsulate using a white color material. If it's real bad, before the wall's put back together, just to protect the wood, because you want to restore it as best you can so that it's set to go for years to come. Occasionally, you'll have to replace some framing, but generally it's finishing materials that are affected, unless it goes on for a long time. And sometimes you have some, especially underneath, some band boards and joists and stuff. This is an attic. You know, we see this, usually it's a problem with ventilation. In this case, those pieces of cardboard are called baffles. They're supposed to keep the soffit vent clear under the eave of the house. Those little thin line 3x12, 3x14 metal vents, they'll tack and they'll cut a hole, and if it's a wood soffit, they'll cut a hole. Sometimes the aluminum, it'll have the perforations in it, but I've seen aluminum with the perforations in it. I've seen that put over solid wood with no vents too, and they end up with some kind of problem. So generally going to be an attic ventilation problem. Sometimes it's lack of insulation, because you get warm air coming up from the house and coming straight through the insulation, because they don't have any attic insulation. We have a couple inches left from 40 years ago, and it'll heat the interior side of the roof sheathing, and then basically with the cold, you know, the frozen outside, and the nails they'll condense moisture, they'll freeze, and then they'll thaw again when it's warm, and you'll see all the roofing nails will be rusted. And then you'll see, it'll generally be the north side, not the south side of the roof. So it'll be one side or the other, in other words, north side. And then it'll also be the spotting, is what I want to point out. So the black, that's a spotting, we call spotting, which is an indication of a problem. It's not necessarily affecting the living space with an air quality problem, but it's not normal. So we restored it. Generally, we'll take, if we got a problem where the insulation's blocking the vents and stuff, sometimes we have to pull it out. We'll pull it out, and then we use dry ice to clean the wood structures, or else we'll use some other techniques, some hand cleaning techniques and treatments, and it'll restore that pretty nice. This second picture, I should have taken it the same angle, but you can kind of see the wood's pretty clean, and this is the new insulation, bring it up to R38, which is the current code. So we do all that, believe it or not. You probably didn't know we did all that, did you, Arthur?
No, I did not.
We don't do a ton of those. We do a lot of attics. This is a basement joist, floor joist structure in a basement. We see this every day. A lot of times people, if it's unfinished, they don't really heat and cool it, or the builder didn't put in a whole lot of ventilation anyway. People just close them or whatever. So it's humid down there in the summer, and it'll just over the course of several years will develop this type of problem. Sometimes it goes back to construction, and so we do work with some of the builders, and they'll have us come out and clean them during the construction, because until they get them dried in, I mean, this can happen with new lumber. I mean, shoot, sometimes it'll come this way, from the lumber company, it'll have some of this, or sits out on the lot for a few days or a week or two, and has some problems from being laying in the mud. But you'll see this, if you see this in the unfinished basement, it should be removed. And then it'll look, generally it's gonna look something like this when it's clean and done properly. Okay. Sorry. Let's see this. Crawl spaces, we do complete encapsulation, so you'll see this type of thing. Ineffective old vapor barrier is not doing anything at this point. Evidence of water intrusion through the block walls, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll put in, what we'll do on these generally, we're gonna line them, clean the wood, replace any insulation, remove the old vapor barrier, reline it, and then we'll put in if it's real bad and we don't know how to fix it outside, or can't make a recommendation that we're comfortable with, or the customer just feels more comfortable, we'll put a mini basin, which is a sump pit in the crawl, and we'll put some perforated tile in under the liner. And then we'll install a pump and a power source for the pump with a one-way valve there, and that'll drain anything that gets behind the liner. And then the other thing we do is we seal those liners, so we overlap the seams. Basically, what we do is we'll do the walls first, okay? So we'll do the walls, and it'll come down onto the floor. We use a 6-foot material usually, and the walls maybe 3 feet high, so it'll come down onto the floors, and then we'll put the floor over that, and at least a 12-inch seam or overlap, and then we'll seal that seam, so if there's any water coming down the wall behind it, it'll stay behind that and under that liner. So you're basically, your wall's going under your floor liner, so the water is under this wall liner and kept there. And then we go back and we drill a hole every 2 feet, put a button to hold it to the top of the wall within a few inches of the sill plate. You don't want to attach it to the wood, because it could trap moisture and rot. And then we'll caulk that construction, basically seal that seam to the wall. So we'll glue it to the wall all the way around. And then all your pillars and stuff will be sealed. How are we doing? We good on time? Okay, questions? Tim. So that's my little tidbit for you, things to look for on the mold and moisture. Any questions come up after the presentation or after today, or you see a listing or a house that you just have a question? Generally speaking, we look at these for people if there's a concern that's visible. We don't charge for that. There is a fee for testing and assessments where people want reports, written reports and analytical data, which carry some lab fees and shipping costs. And of course, anybody who comes out from our staff is going to be, generally speaking, is going to be a nationally board certified environmental specialist. So, let us know. We're here to support you.
What's that cost? People watching online or people here present, what does a test cost?
Well, the testing,
on a house?
Let's see. The testing is in the 500 range, 500 or so. Now that includes a detailed on-site inspection and assessment, which is more extensive than what you're going to see in a typical home inspection, again by a certified environmental specialist who's board certified. And then you're going to get things like humidity, moisture content of your materials in the area of concern, a written report from environmental doctor that's going to detail our site observations, our readings that we took on site, and then also explain the analytical data. The report that the lab sends is going to be explained in our report, and then it's going to result in a set of specific recommendations based on all that information for correcting any known or identified issues. So from us, it'll also include a proposed scope of work if that's so desired, if that's appropriate, so it would avoid having to send someone back out to do what you might call a a set of recommendations. It's going to include all that. Now, we do them without testing too. They're less than $200.
Okay.
If you don't want testing, it's an assessment. Now, that's if you need a report. If you have a known problem or you have a suspected problem and you want us to go look at it and tell you what we think, there's no charge for that. So it's a range of services depending on the situation.
Gotcha.
Testing's the best way to really know. I mean, otherwise you're counting on us to, and I think we're decent at it, but testing is the only way to have scientific data in addition to our opinions and our readings that we take on site. So testing is the best, most comprehensive approach to say, here's what, and that includes indoors, to know what your true exposure risk is. What is the concentration indoors? The only way to know that is to test.
And as far as the Stoichia boitrus, is that the most, that's black mold, right?
Stachybotrys, yes.
And is that the most common one that you see?
Excuse me. No, it's not. It's the least common, and it takes a lot of water and a lot of prolonged moisture to develop on surfaces. It's generally found in concealed locations that go undetected for long periods of time. Long, like it's a plumbing leak behind a shower valve that's been leaking into that wall behind the bathtub for 5 years. That's where it is usually, and that's a common misconception. Stachybotrys is difficult to grow indoors, and it's almost never seen outdoors. So the most common is going to be your penicillium, which is used to make penicillin, the miracle drug, and then, but it'll cause allergy problems. It's the most common type, not normal for it to grow indoors. You do not want it growing in a crawl space or in your house, but that's the most common type. The second most common type is called cladosporium, and the penicillium is usually a light color, a real light color mold, and then the cladosporium, which will be typically in the yellow to brown color category, it's going to be the second most common, at least in this area, in my experience. I can send you some info, but that's actually, you can Google that too. These are common mold types. They're found indoors and outdoors. That's why they're so common, because we'll find them outside with a 80% frequency in this region. So 80% of the time we test outside, we're gonna get those in the results. Stachybotrys, that's gonna be, I don't have that. I have a little pocket guide. I'm gonna say 10% of frequency. If you test outside, maybe less. Probably less.
So say we get a property in the contract, how long would it take to get some sort of results, whether it's just an assessment to go take a look at it?
Yeah.
What
Well, yeah, usually we need, I mean, if it's we deal with what the customer need is. I mean, having the staff helps, having a large staff helps. So we can usually get to a property, if we're taking our time, we're gonna be there within 3 or 4 days. I mean, that's taking our time. If you need it tomorrow, then generally we're figuring out how to get it done. Or today, same day is always a little disruptive, but we can do that sometimes if we have, if Arthur calls. No, I mean, we do what we have to do.
And you've done that before.
Right, but the short answer is, we're usually gonna be at a property within 2 to 3 business days, on a regular call, a routine call, where nobody's setting a time constraint on us. We're gonna be there in probably 3 days. You just call and say, hey, can I get somebody out here? You're not asking for it by Friday, you're just whatever. We're probably gonna be there in 3 days, average. And then if we're testing, we have to overnight that to the lab by FedEx down to Virginia. Then they have a 2-day standard turnaround time, okay? So we're there, they get it the next day. Day 3, we get it back. We get their report back. And then in our normal workflow, which is 5 to 8 appointments per specialist per day, we have 4 plus me on our staff full time. So we have 5 of us who can do this work, certified. And we usually ask for 2 more business days max, just because we're running, I mean, not me, but the other people, they're running 4 or 5 appointments a day, so they have their workflow. They're trying to get all their other estimates and stuff. But again, this is a matter of urgency. If we have to, we can, in theory, we could have results the next day for an urgent matter. So 5 business days is with testing and assessment from the date that we visit the property.
Are you able to handle commercial, like restaurants and things of this nature as well?
Yeah, we do a lot. We have 1 full-time commercial environmental consultant on our staff who's certified in this area. And all these consultants we employ are also environmental specialists with 4-year degrees in environmental science. So these people are experienced and educated in this stuff, and then myself. So commercially, we have one full-time environmental consultant, and then I back up that person, and we actually have an alternate. We have some other people who can look at things and take a look at things and take some pictures and buy us some time if somebody's out of town or on vacation. But yes, we're about 40 to it varies by year, but 40 to 45% commercial. So we do a lot of work, in that area. Not as much mold, more of the radon, chemical vapor, some, brownfield sites where dry cleaners and old industrial, where the manufacturing was done, they're revitalizing. We're doing an old shoe factory, 175-year-old shoe factory in Lancaster right now, if you know where that is, southeast of Columbus. Huge revitalization project. Airbnbs, restaurants, apartments, all on the same site. We're doing the chemical vapor intrusion mitigation there. So a lot of the commercial is more legacy related, redeveloping properties in areas that used to have certain types of chemical use operations in play and stuff like that. But we do new construction. We do a fair amount of government work, new government buildings, radon. But yeah, we can handle. We do a lot of commercial stuff in the mold and testing and schools, and have some issues and that kind of stuff.
Great.
Okay. Guys, thanks for your time. Thanks for sitting through it with me. Appreciate you. And if there's nothing else, we're good to go. Okay. Well, let me know if anything comes up.
We will. Thank you very much, Brandon. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.